Good morning, and we're on another tour together with my wife. So this will be an interesting one again. This time we're going to go to the underground Byzantium palaces and the catacombs. And again the same tour from a local guide for locals. And I think this time we will also have some fun. And let's do it!
I'm coming home to you. I'm coming home to you.
So we have arrived at the historic peninsula, where we will meet with our tour guides, and our tour will start at the Column of Constantine. This time we are exploring the remaining monuments of the Byzantine Empire, the heart of the empire, the remains of the Imperial palaces, and the leftovers of the Hippodrome. But before we start the tour, I have to thank our guides, Ayhan, Hüseyin, Avni and Hayri Birinci, who showed us that there's much more to see below the surface than there's above it today. This will be a full day walk, so get your walking shoes, wear a hat as it can be quite warm, and the tour will start at 10 o'clock in the morning and end around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And for the ladies, please bring a scarf, as we are also going to enter a mosque. The city itself has undergone lots of changes during the history, and the column for sure also. It is known that the column was in the middle of the city and in a city square, which was actually a circle. And it was believed that it was higher than it is today. And it also had an Apollo statue on it. From here we will be walking in the direction of the Hypodrome. But before that we are going to visit a cistern, which is one of many in Istanbul actually. And all of our guides start telling stories about nearly every cornerstone, which seems to be part of the city and are nearly invisible, but actually are hundreds of years old. This cistern had been discovered recently and is now a private museum, which is very fortunate, or otherwise we would have never have been able to see this beautiful place. Just remember, the museum card is not valid in private museums, but don't worry, they are not expensive to enter. I think it was only 10 Turkish liras for entry. As you can see, to be able to see the remains of the Byzantine Empire, we have to go underground. As unfortunately the city of Istanbul has been built on the remains of Constantinople. And what you can see on the surface is only the tip of the iceberg. This has been going on for over 500 years, and I think this is the fate of all ancient cities. In the 19th century, when a famous French architect came to Istanbul to help to plan the construction of Istanbul, his proposal was to tear down the whole historic peninsula and restore all the remains of Constantinople. He actually said that this would have resulted in having rebuilt the most magnificent city of all ancient times, even more glorious than Rome. But this was not possible, and so here we are sitting on a treasure without being able to dig it out.
These skies have a different light, white noise that keeps me up at night. I can't help but think back to you. I wish that I could find a face that I would recognize.
Now, moving on, you ask why we are standing in front of this ugly building. Well, there's a reason. As I said before, we are sitting on a treasure, and according to our guides, at the basement of this apartment we will be able to see some archaeological Byzantine remains. Actually, in this area, in this district, you would be able to find Byzantine remains in every basement. Unfortunately, our guides cannot reach the apartment manager and we have to move on. Very sorry about that. I need to say that if a new building is built, In this district, they have the concrete truck ready to immediately pour concrete in the basement of the construction, as it is almost certain that they will find remains of the Byzantine Empire, which means certainly stopping of the construction. To prevent this, they cover up any remains immediately. Here you can also see a construction area which was not quick enough to cover the remains and had been stopped. On the other hand, some building owners restore the remains in their basement and establish a mini private museum for everybody to visit. Next we arrive at the Hypodrome, which from the surface you can only see a modern square and some walls remains. But before we go into detail, I think we deserved some lunch. And just before exploring the remains, we decide to eat just at the square. Here we have two options. One is the famous Sultanahmet köftecisi, which is serving meatballs, but as I already had meatballs yesterday, I prefer to eat something else. Next, we decide to have a dessert, and we visit the cafe next door, which is also a very nice old building. But not only, I have tried many desserts in Turkey, but this one was really new. So this dessert was absolutely a delight, and the sauce was just great. Being sweet, it was quite light actually. And I will be definitely back for some more. By the way, I will be definitely making a video on Turkish delights. So stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe. So back to the Hypodrome. While our guides start to tell us stories about the Hypodrome, we also have a look at three monuments which stand on the square, which was once the Hypodrome.
Can't help but think back to you.
Here one of the monuments is the German fountain, which is a very nice building, I must say.
It's been hard, you know I wanted to stay, caught us off guard, but there was no other way. Did you wait? 'Cause I've been counting the days and I'm calling.
Next we have the obelisk of Theodosius and the ancient Greek bronze column, which has its missing serpent's heads. Besides, I am also trying to show you some pictures of how these monuments should have been originally. Okay, back again to the Hypodrome. To understand how big the Hypodrome is or was, or better to say how big the remains are still under the city, we have to see the visible entrance wall, which was said to be 5 stairs high, and on top you have to think that also you have to add columns on it, which were also about 3 to 5 meters high. So incredible high building for that time.
The things haven't changed. Life took us.
You can say it was the biggest Hyperdrome built in the ancient world, which is even bigger than the Colosseum in Rome. And hopefully someday the interiors will be fully explored, which somehow nobody finds the money and the will to do.
'Cause I've been counting the
We walk behind the Hagia Sophia towards the Topkapı Palace.
These skies have a different light, white noise that keeps me up at night. I can't help but think back to you. I wish that I could find a face that I would recognize. I replay the
And while the entrance of the Topkapı Palace is very beautiful, on the right side you can see the remains of the entrance of the Byzantine Imperial Palace. which also very unfortunately has been standing like this for years now.
To say I'm coming home to you.
This has also been a huge building, and you can find its remains all over this area. As we walk down towards the seaside, we enter a cafe, from where we walk the stairs down to some catacomb remains of the old palace. You can imagine that this whole district is built on the old palace. What treasures lies in there below the city, nobody knows really.
I'm coming home to you. I'm coming home to you. Ooh, ooh. I'm coming home to you. And I know that it's time overdue, but I'm coming home. Hold on to my embrace this time, I promise it won't break. I'm hoping that things haven't changed.
While walking towards the coast on the remains of the old palace, we arrive at the Mosaic Museum, which is full of beautiful and still luckily preserved mosaic. The interesting side of this museum is that none of these mosaics were brought here, but the museum was built on the mosaics itself, as these are part of the ancient palace.
I can't help but think back to you. I wish that I could find a face that I would rest in hard. You know I wanted to stay, caught us off guard, but there was no other way. Did you wait? 'Cause I've been counting the days, and I'm calling up to say I'm coming home to you.
On our way down to the coast, we also visit a mosque, which had been converted from a church. You can definitely understand this from the architecture. Oh, and by the way, the Turkish mosque architecture is very different than the mosques of other Muslim countries. The Ottoman directly took over the church architecture in its mosques, and that is why you can easily think that you are entering a church while entering a Turkish mosque.
I'm coming home to you.
Now that we have arrived at the coastline, we also see the remains of the palace wall, which were directly near the harbor. This will be also the end of our daily tour. By the way, can you also see the dock looking down to us from that window? Can that be the reincarnation of one of the Byzantine empires? Who knows? So for more of these videos, please subscribe, press the like button and leave some comments. Stay safe and healthy.
Did you wait? 'Cause I've been counting the days, and I'm calling up to say I'm coming home to you. I'm coming home to you.